Welcome back to Squawk Box. A recent report card on the nation's infrastructure gave barely passing marks for us and highlighted a glaring and growing vulnerability in everything from bridges to ports to energy to communications and beyond. Diane Olick explains in her continuing series on the rising risks from climate change.
At Fort Lauderdale International Airport, historic rainfall turned runways into rivers, shutting it down and stranding passengers. And in New York City, extreme heat caused metal on this bridge to expand so much that the bridge got stuck open. U.S. infrastructure can't handle climate change. That's a recent finding by the American Society of Civil Engineers, which trains engineers and informs federal, state, and local building codes. According to that report, climate-related challenges are widespread, affecting even regions previously resistant to these events. The ASCE's overall grade for the nation's infrastructure, a C.
We continue to see more extreme weather events. So our infrastructure many times was not designed for these types of activities.
Executive Director Tom Smith says it will only get worse.
Whether it's ice, snow, drought, heat, obviously hurricanes, tornadoes. We have to design for all of that, and we have to anticipate, not just where the puck is now, but where we think it's going.
Sectors with the worst grades include airports, power, and telecommunications infrastructure. We asked First Street, a climate risk firm, to overlay its risk modeling on these specific locations nationally. It found that 19% of all power, 17% of telecommunications, and 12% of airports have a major risk from flood, wind, or fire, and those numbers will rise.
It was built decades ago, and so it was built for a climate that no longer exists.
Sarah Kapnick was chief scientist at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, but was lured away by J.P. Morgan, whose clients were asking more and more questions about the climate impacts to their investments.
How should I change and invest in my infrastructure? How should I think about differences in my infrastructure construction? Should I be thinking about insurance, different types of insurance? How should I be accessing the capital markets to do this type of work?
For both Kapnick and Smith, making infrastructure climate resilient all comes back to the science.
Climate and science is something that we take very, very seriously, working with the science, connecting it with the engineering to protect the public health, safety, and welfare.
But that science is seeing deep cuts from the Trump administration. It fired hundreds of employees at NOAA, FEMA, and NIST, key government agencies that advance climate science.
There's going to be this adjustment period as people figure out where they're going to get the information that they need, because many market decisions or financial decisions are based on certain data sets that people thought would always be there.
In addition to science, the nation's infrastructure, of course, also needs funding. ASCE estimates there is a $3.7 trillion gap over the next 10 years to get U.S. infrastructure to a state of good condition. The Trump administration's cuts to spending so far include ordering FEMA to cancel the nearly $1 billion Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program, which was specifically aimed at reducing damage from future natural disasters. Back to you guys.
Diana, in terms of just biggest surprise to you, and what do you think the biggest surprise is that business leaders don't appreciate in all of this? Putting aside the policy piece, given where we are.
It's really the science. It's how much we have to rely on the science going forward to protect those investments in infrastructure. Because when you look at things like stormwaters and dams and all aspects, there were actually 18 categories in that report. And when you look at most of those, they were designed, again, as I said, for a climate that doesn't exist. We do have the science. We do have the ability to build better. The problem is that if we lose those resources and can't inform our engineers, then we're going nowhere. And so what was so surprising to me is how much those engineers have relied on climate science and how much that's going to hit them going forward when we don't have it.